from a bright and sunny corner of Aspen Boyd on Campus Corner. This is Pregame Live. We're streaming live on newsok.com. I'm Deputy Sports Editor Mike Koehler. Joining me today to talk about today's game, columnist Barry Tramel of the Oklahoman and Oklahoman OU beat writer Jake Trotter. Today we're going to spend some time taking questions from people online. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about all the other stuff that's happening this first Saturday of the college football season. Barry, we'll go ahead and start with you. You wrote in this morning's Oklahoman that this was the biggest mismatch in the history of OU football. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and where does it stack up against other contenders for that dubious title?
Well, it is the biggest mismatch in OU history. Going into the game, I mean, I don't think OU is going to win 179-0, which is what they beat Kingfisher College by back in 17 or 18. But in terms of talent and status of the programs, this is clearly the biggest mismatch. Chattanooga is a bottom-rung 1AA program. They've not had a winning conference record in 17 years. So this is the Baylor of 1AA. When OU plays Baylor, it's a mismatch. This is the Baylor of a lower division, so it's clearly the biggest mismatch in history. Now, there have been a couple of other games that were pretty big mismatches. Wake Forest in the early 70s was just awful. They came in here and OU beat them, I think, 63-zip. 1974, Kansas State, bunch of Kansas State games were bad. Indiana State was a 1AA team in 99, but that was Bob Stoops' first year. He didn't have the program going strong. The gulf between these two programs, I think, is the biggest in Oklahoma history.
All right, let's bring Jake in on this a little bit. Jake, I guess the question for you is, are we going to continue to see games like this, or are we going to continue to see games like this that are kind of balanced out with a premier non-conference game like they have coming up in the next few years, like they have with Cincinnati and Washington? What do you see as far as the future of these games go?
Well, barring anything unpredictable, this is going to be the worst OU non-conference schedule in probably 10 years because they have the likes of Tennessee, LSU, Notre Dame, Florida State, Ohio State, who am I forgetting? Miami of Florida next year, who will be better. So they have a big-time opponent lined up until 2019. They don't really have that this year. They were planning on Washington to be that big-time opponent, and the Huskies have slipped in recent years.
Barry, what do you think about this continuing to be a problem? Is it a problem, and how should it be fixed?
Well, it's not going to be fixed until they centralize college football scheduling and the conferences come together and agree to play a certain amount of games against each other. As it stands now, the standard is about one. Most teams average one non-conference game against a fellow BCS league school. If everyone agreed to play two, then your supply and demand would get more in line. You could find more teams to play in non-conference. You wouldn't have to dip down to the 1AA level. To me, that's the easy solution. If the six major conferences would just make a pact that everyone will play at least two of each other.
Yeah, they're kind of doing that in basketball with the challenges and things like that now. Just a reminder, everybody, you're watching Pregame Live on News OK, presented by Big Red Sports and Imports. I'm Mike Koehler, joined by Barry Tramel and Jake Trotter. Jake, let's talk a little bit more about what's going to happen today. Game kicks off at 6:10. What are the Sooners hoping to accomplish? Is it just a matter of win and don't get anybody hurt? Or what do you think they're going in for?
Well, they're going to win. That's a foregone conclusion. I think they want to execute well. You don't want to go out there and be sloppy in the first quarter or the second quarter, and all of a sudden you're only up 20 points. You got to play your starters the whole game. I think what they're going to try to do is KO Chattanooga in the first half, play Bradford and Murray maybe one series in the third quarter, and then let some of these true freshmen play who are very talented.
Tell me more about some of the newcomers that we're going to see.
Well, there's up to 10 or 11 true freshmen who are going to play, which is a ton considering they only had one last year in Keith Nickel. Some of the guys that you'll see on the field today are you have DeJuan Miller and Jamil Owens, the kid from Muskogee, at wide receiver. They really like those players a lot. You'll see Joseph Bilue and free safety. Some other guy at running back, you'll see Justin Johnson, who obviously was here in the spring. a couple of offensive linemen, and Stephen Good, who's going to be a guard for the Sooners, and then Ben Haber, a center. So, and maybe even R.J. Washington, the defensive end too. So they're gonna put a lot of true freshmen on the field, especially for a program the caliber of Oklahoma.
Barry, talk a little bit about what you think OU's goal should be today. What do you think they're trying to accomplish? Is it just a matter of just win and don't look silly?
Well, I think the goal is keep everybody healthy, primarily DeMarco Murray and Sam Bradford. But outside of health, the thing I'm going to look at most is kicking. You know, they got the new kickers, Jimmy Stevens, Tress Way. That's the one thing that, opponents doesn't matter when you're talking about kicking. The goalposts don't change. So I want to see if these new guys can kick. Can they get plays off with the new 40-second? There's a few things you can learn. But for the most part, it's going to be a little bit even. It's going to be south of a scrimmage. Some people have said this will be a scrimmage. It's not even that because the talent level is so wide. They won't be able to learn much in terms of physicality against worthy opponents. So it's more just sort of the system, getting plays in and out, getting units, kicking game on and off the field, those kinds of things. So I think the guys on the spotlight today, Tress Way and Jimmy Stevens.
Are there any other particular new guys that you're interested in seeing how they perform, besides the kickers, which is more of a position battle sort of deal?
Well, I mean, I'll probably pay a little attention to the corners, Brian Jackson and Dom Franks, and the guys they run out there because cornerbacks are a huge position. I know how good Granger and McCoy are, so if you got good tackles and good cornerbacks, you're going to have a fabulous defense. If Franks and Jackson, not that if you shut down Chattanooga, you can shut down Texas, but if if they play well today, I think that's a good sign.
Jake, Barry is saying if you have a good line and good corners, you're set. So how worried should people be about the linebackers? That's an area of concern. You got Mike Ballaghan coming in fresh from the construction side, I think, to start for the Sooners today. How big a worry is that?
Well, I don't know how big a worry it is. It's obviously their biggest changeover from last year. They basically have three new faces when you count the fact that Ryan Reynolds is moving from the outside to the middle. But they get Austin Box back next week, who was going to be the starter at weak side, which is going to help them out a lot because he's been here for over a year now. So I think they're going to be okay at linebacker, but definitely if you're looking at a trouble spot, that could potentially be one, especially when you're talking about Box and Ryan Reynolds, who have had health problems in the past.
All right, reminding everybody again, you're on News OK. You're watching Pregame live from Campus Corner, presented by Big Red Sports and Imports. I'm Mike Koehler, joined by Barry Tramel and Jake Trotter. Just a couple things. Let's get an update on the OSU game. Last time we saw, they were up 15-0 over Washington State in Seattle going into halftime. A couple other things to talk about. In addition to Pregame Live, which you're watching live on newsok.com, we've got a whole bunch of new stuff we're doing this year with the Oklahoman and News OK. I'm sure everybody saw today the new edition of Pregame, our weekly 4-page preview section on the Oklahoman, looking at the OU and OSU games. Something new this year, too, which wrapped around that section was what we call Spadia. That gave you the full rosters and depth charts for both the teams. And then if you go to newsok.com and sign up for our email alerts, you would have gotten this, which is a printable pregame with a roster, depth chart, and storylines to the game, which go right into your email inbox every Friday during the season. So that's enough of me selling. Let's talk about what else is going on today, the first Saturday of college football season. Barry, looking at the slate of the games that are today, we got a bunch of interesting ones. Which one most intrigues you? Which one do you see most ripe for an upset?
Well, Missouri-Illinois is the best game of the day, I think. Neutral field, two teams that really emerged last year, good rivals. It's a great game. I think it's the game of the day. Alabama-Clemson's a good one also. As far as upsets, I'm looking at a game that's, I think, interesting to the Sooners is Washington-Oregon tonight. Oregon's lost its quarterback. Ducks not sure how good they're going to be. This is a chance for Tyrone Willingham to get off on a good start in what is a make-or-break year for him. It won't be easy playing at Eugene, but I think that's an interesting game. Washington, Oregon is my favorite game outside the marquee.
Jake, what do you looking at the games today? There were, East Central has given Virginia Tech a game. What do you see as the most interesting games of the day?
Well, so far it was East Central, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech dominated the kicking game all day, returned an interception for a touchdown or a fumble for a touchdown. And then in the closing minutes, East Carolina blocks a punt and scores a touchdown to win the game. So that's the big upset of the day. He talked about Missouri, Illinois. I'll talk about Alabama, Clemson. Clemson, there's a lot of high expectations on them this year with the quarterback, Cullen Harper, coming back. They have a chance to win a relatively easy league and maybe run the table, which would put them in the national title conversation. Although the ACC is dreadful, as Virginia Tech showed today. It's a really bad league. But I think that's an interesting game because Alabama should be improved. They have a couple back-to-back top-flight recruiting classes from Nick Saban there. So that should be a great ball game. And a pretty terrific atmosphere at the Georgia Dome.
Can you talk a little bit about Missouri, Illinois, too? Do you see Missouri having a chance to get upset right out of the box there with expectations being really through the roof this year for the Tigers?
Well, other than at Texas, this could be Missouri's toughest game of the year. I mean, Illinois is a very good team. People forgot that they went to the Rose Bowl last year before getting waxed by USC. The quarterback, Juice Williams, is back, and he's a very nice player for them. Remember, they went to Ohio State and won last year and basically almost knocked the Buckeyes out of the national title game. They got a nice ball club, and it wouldn't shock me if Illinois went in there and beat Missouri in what should be a really high-scoring game.
Barry, of course, we had some games on Thursday night. The Art Briles era opened in Baylor. They got smacked around by Wake Forest. Is that just a lost cause of a job down there, or could they ever do what Kansas did, what Kansas State has done in the past, and ever make that a competitive program?
Well, the team that beat Baylor really bad Thursday night is a school that should give inspiration to Baylor. I mean, Wake Forest has no business winning football games either. They went to the Orange Bowl 2 years ago. They won the ACC. Now, the ACC is down compared to where the Big 12 is now. But if Wake Forest can go to the Orange Bowl, Baylor can go to the Independence Bowl. So it's not a lost cause in Waco. It's going to be a lost cause if they keep hiring coaches who think Kirby Freeman can quarterback. I mean, for crying out loud, we saw Kirby Freeman come here with Miami last year, and Miami, Randy Shannon thought the same thing. He kept trotting him out there when clearly Kyle Wright was the better player. I don't know what it is about Kirby Freeman that makes coaches love him, but Art Briles is going to struggle so long as he doesn't know which quarterback to use.
Let's talk a little bit about the NFL. Of course, it opens here in the next week. Curtis Lofton leaves OU early, and now he's looking like he's going to start in Atlanta. Is that a surprise for you, Jake, that he's going to be an NFL starter right off the bat?
1 point real quick to Baylor. They have a freshman quarterback named Robert Griffin who came into the game for Kirby Freeman, and he's got a chance to make them exciting over the next 4 years. He said he came 1/100th of a second of setting the national high school record in the 300-meter hurdles. I was in Austin, Texas, But as for Curtis Lofton, not surprised at all. He's a ball player. I mean, there's some guys that have the speed and the high, and the vertical, but like Brent Venables always said, he just makes a lot of plays, and he's going to be a big part of that defense. They're really counting on him to emerge in that linebacking spot to solidify the defense.
Barry, one of the things we're going to do in Sunday's paper is we're going to do an all-Oklahoman NFL team. And the defense is pretty good. Across the front, you got Tommy Harris, you got Dusty, you got Kelly Gregg, you got the two guys from OSU who are all pro guys. But it's always hard to find a quarterback. Just looking at the NFL getting ready to start, who do you see as I guess the most exciting guy from our state who are going to play in the NFL this year, and who's the surprise guy?
Well, I don't know. Most exciting, I still think it's the defensive linemen, the three defensive linemen. Kelly Gregg with the Ravens, Jamal Williams with the Chargers, Kevin Williams with the Vikings. It's not a marquee position, defensive tackle. The defensive ends get all the sacks and get all the glory. They're sort of like closers in baseball. But the defensive tackles are the guys that really make it work. They're the ones that stuff the run. They're the ones that free up everyone else to make tackles. Those three guys play big-time defense. They're huge NFL assets, very valuable guys. I think they're the three guys. If you get a chance any time at all to watch the Vikings, the Chargers, or the Ravens, watch those guys from Oklahoma, because they can really they can play a man's game in a brutal sport. As far as biggest surprise, I don't think it's going to be Malcolm Kelly. Looks like his stock is still continuing to fall, beginning with the December injury, then the pre-draft run-in with Jerry Schmidt and that unfortunate incident. Now he's hurt again, so it's not going to be Malcolm. I heard Rich Eisen of the NFL Network this week pick the Vikings to make the Super Bowl. So they're not going to make the Super Bowl without Adrian Peterson loading up and rushing for about 1,700 yards. So I would expect another huge year out of Peterson on his way to the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Jake, you talk a little bit about Adrian. What do you expect him to do? Last year all he did was win Rookie of the Year and set the single-game rushing record, for crying out loud. What do you see from him this year?
Well, I think a similar season. The biggest key for him is staying healthy. He's got to stay healthy. He's had some injury problems in his career in college and in the NFL. But if he stays healthy, the sky's the limit. I mean, he could be a 2,000-yard rusher with as many times they're going to give him the ball in Minnesota.
All right, you're watching Pregame Live on NewsOK.com, presented by Big Red Sports and Imports. I'm Mike Koehler, joined by Barry Tramel and Jake Trotter. Guys, just to wrap it up, let's look ahead a little bit for the Sooners. I'm sure they're just taking it one game at a time, but let's talk about the next couple weeks. Cincinnati isn't really a slouch. Washington going up there and playing, is not an easy deal. What do you see out of OU the next couple weeks?
Well, Cincinnati will be a very good test. They're a solid team. I would think Oklahoma would win without sweating too much, but Cincinnati's a legit team. 2 weeks from today at Washington's going to be a dogfight. OU has not proven that it can dominate on the road. Last year loses at Lubbock, loses at Boulder, struggles at Ames. That game at Seattle will not be easy.
Jake, what do you see? You know a little bit about Cincinnati. You know that Washington can be hard on the road. What do you see OU doing the next couple of weeks?
Well, people are making a big deal out of Ben Mock being out of the game because of eligibility. The guy they have coming back is Dustin Grutza, who was the starter before Mock, and he had a terrific game. I know it was Eastern Washington, but if you look at his stat line, it was real impressive. I think he played one game last year and threw for like 4 or 5 touchdowns. So they're going to throw the ball around and really test Dominique Franks and Brian Jackson in the secondary.
What about Washington? They got Jake Locker. He's a pretty exciting guy. If he was on a team that had anything around him, he'd be in the conversation with Chase Daniel and Sam and then guys like that. What do you think of Washington?
Well, they're kind of an enigma right now because they're starting so many underclassmen. I mean, we know about Jake Locker. He was the Pac-10 Freshman of the Year. But then they have a bunch of freshmen and sophomores around him. So we don't know. We'll have to wait and see how they do against Oregon tonight. But potentially that could be a dangerous game because of how good Washington's quarterback is.
All right, let's wrap it up with just predictions about today. I know you guys had your predictions in the paper the other day. You've had some time to think about it. Barry, I know you've been approaching triple digits as the week's gone on. Final word, prediction for today's game.
Well, I think I said 63-6, I think, in the paper. I don't think Bob wants to score 70. He'll do all he can to hold it under 70, which includes maybe scrapping the last extra point. So I'll upgrade and go 69-6.
Jake, what about you? Can it get higher than that?
Well, I have them making the extra point, so that makes it 70. I don't have them making a field goal, so 70-3.
All righty, that wraps up this edition, our first exciting edition of Pregame Live from Campus Corner in Norman on NewsOK.com. Be sure to join us next week here at home before the Cincinnati game And after the game tonight, be sure to go to newsok.com. Be sure to pick up the Oklahoman, which I'm sure is going to be in your driveway in the morning. See all the great videos, see all the great stories that we have about this game and more. Thanks a lot to our friends at Big Red Sports and Imports for sponsoring our video today. And for all our friends at 9000 North Broadway in Oklahoma City, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.